Hello, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. Obviously not in my garden today. I am in Decatur, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. Some of you know that I'm here because my second kid, B, is doing an individual mock trial competition called Gladiator. There's about 60 competitors from all over the world. I think there's folks here from Japan and China, as well as all over the US. She's one of 2 competitors from Oregon who made it into this competition. So she's having to put on a full trial. She has to play the prosecution in one round, the defense in another round. She has to play witnesses as well. So they have to prep and know the whole case, and they have to be able to run all parts of it versus a normal mock trial competition where you have a couple of roles, but you're either a lawyer or you're a witness, and you might do the open and you might do the cross-examination of one witness, and your teammates will do all of the rest. For this, it's one person. They prep all parts of the case, run all parts of the case. So that means she has to do an open, she has to do a direct examination of a witness, cross-examination of 2 witnesses, a closing argument, and then obviously like any redirect or recross or rebuttal or whatever, depending on her role. And then she also has to play a defense witness and a prosecution witness in different trials. So this has been a tremendous amount of prep, and I made a couple of videos about how this trip is really expensive. The entry fee alone into the competition is like $800 or $900, although B did get a little bit of a scholarship to come here. But it was really expensive. And then obviously plane tickets from Portland to Georgia, hotel room for 6 days, and then food. And we decided not to rent a car. I crunched the numbers, and I always try to take public transit when I'm vacationing somewhere if I possibly can. But because we're like in a little suburb here, that didn't work. But almost everything we need is within walking distance from the hotel, including the courthouse and all of the food and like the CVS and things like that. And so I decided we would just take an Uber from the airport. It's about 40 minutes. And then we needed to take one other Uber to get to the Office Depot because, hang on a second, I'll show you. Okay, we flew on an airplane. Oop, I'm losing my camera a little bit. Okay, so we obviously flew on an airplane to get here, and we had carry-on baggage only. And in court trials, you often see pieces of evidence blown up, or there might be, some kind of checklist or something that the attorneys are using. Those are called demonstratives. And B had 5 of them, and they don't fit on the airplane. So what I did is I had this and then a bunch of her court materials on 8.5 by 11 paper printed at the local Office Depot. So we had to take an Uber out there and an Uber back. And I have not used an Uber in 5 years. And even then I only used it for Derby, and I was like 4 or 5 of us crammed into an Uber. I was a little bit unaware of how expensive it is. Even so, unless you tip really generously, which I do, I have no idea how Uber drivers are making, a living wage doing that, because, round trip for us, it was like a 15-minute drive there. We asked them to wait for 5 minutes while I ran in and picked up everything we had prepaid for. And then a ride home, that was $30 in Uber fees, plus then 25% tip. But even so, I'm like, that is, she spent 45 minutes of her time, probably total, not including her drive to our location and then her drive to her next Uber. It makes me really that much more aware of the gig economy and how much it exploits vulnerable workers. So anyway, okay, I'm rambling, but y'all wanted an update on how this trip is going. So I made a video initially saying like, this is really expensive. What do I do for this? And I decided ultimately, you guys made suggestions of, I should do a GoFundMe for B, or she should do a fundraiser of some type, like make enamel pins, or maybe do some kind of Patreon with exclusive content where she could talk about her preparation and see if people wanted to donate that way. And I realized like the odds of that fundraising enough to pay for this trip were very, very small. And also that was a ton of extra work. And B works part-time. She does homeless advocacy. She works with a legal nonprofit here in Portland, Sisters of the Road, doing homeless advocacy. She was going to college full-time this summer, and she was studying for her GED because she was not yet a high school graduate. I know some folks have asked about some of my kids. Here in Oregon, a lot of kids, when they're still high school age, can take community college classes for full college credit. My 16-year-old Hal started doing that when he was 15. And over the last year, B has been finishing her senior year of high school while also going to college full-time. She is continuing to go to college full-time this summer, study for the GED, prep for this trial, which is like a part-time job, and then work a part-time job. So I was not going to ask her to fundraise on top of that. And I just don't feel great about doing a GoFundMe asking for donations. I mean, I've seen, no hate to like other folks who've done this, but I've seen folks in my peer group do GoFundMes for their kids for sports or some kind of other like debate team or something, travel. And I would prefer if folks are going to donate to a GoFundMe that they do it for like a family in Palestine, right? Someone with a great need, not someone who is looking for travel for something that is essentially discretionary. So I decided I'm going to try and monetize my TikTok. I actually have a couple of videos on my TikTok about it. I'll probably cut and paste one in here at the end. I decided to try and monetize my TikTok, and I was going to work more hours to earn more money to pay for the trip, right? Because that's how things work in America, in the American economy. It's like, we want to do this luxury thing that's above and beyond our normal budget. Well, I have to put in more hours at work in order to pay for it. So I was able to monetize my TikTok. And in 2 months, I was able to earn enough to pay for this trip in full, plus all the self-employment taxes, plus making donations to charitable causes. So TikTok has turned out to be a pretty good source of revenue. If I look at how much I'm making per hour pre-tax, it's coming out to between $28 and $35 an hour. So I'm not getting rich. It's not like a ton of money. And then obviously I have to pay self-employment taxes out of that, which are hefty. So, but it was enough to pay for this trip without having to ask anybody to donate anything or having to have B do anything above and beyond her very full schedule. So on TikTok and on Facebook and here on YouTube as well, y'all have been curious about what this process is like. And I appreciate y'all being inquisitive and also being really supportive. I read all of the comments out to B and I tell her about all of the likes, and that means a lot to her. I think for her as a young adult who has struggled with really significant dyslexia, the idea of becoming an attorney has been something that she's been really passionate about, but has been really challenging. And along the way, she often has a lot of self-doubt. These are things she says I can talk about, by the way, so I'm not like giving away anything. She's also just had a lot of things stacked against her the last couple years. And I think it can be very common for any of us, especially women, when we want to do something that is really rigorous with a very high level of expectation, that we often have imposter syndrome and we often have doubts that creep in, even when our performance is consistently really high. And so when y'all say encouraging, kind things, like she reads those and takes it to heart. And I think it's just such a statement to me about the internet can be, you know, we often presume the internet's a really toxic place, but it also can be a place where people find real human connection. And when y'all leave kind, thoughtful comments, to me, that's great. To me, absolutely great. But especially when y'all leave them for my kids and you're like encouraging the youth, it really reaffirms my belief in humanity, and it really affirms for me that there are so many good people out there who are willing to extend kindness to a complete and total stranger. So thank you for being willing to say such kind things. So we got in yesterday morning. We flew the red eye. We flew the real cheap flight, so it meant that we had to sleep in the Denver airport for a couple of hours. And then we flew into Atlanta, and basically she has been practicing nonstop. Y'all asked a little bit what that process is like, so I'll cut in a video here really quickly and show you a few minutes of her prep.
I'm gonna take a second and address the defense's version of events. Now, they say that this investigation, it's not complete. We can't possibly know who did it. But members of the jury, the only way to believe that version of events is if you ignore all of the evidence presented today.
Right now, she's scrimmaging with some other competitors, and then we're going to get ready and go to the opening ceremony and the dinner, and then the real cases start tomorrow morning first thing. And she'll have 3 cases a day for 2 days in a row, and we'll see how that goes. So for me, this has been a really interesting learning process because, you know, she's done mock trial for a long time. And before that, she did the junior high version, which is called Order in the Court. And she's done Model UN. She's been really active in taking courses on Supreme Court case history, et cetera, et cetera. Probably from about age 7 on, B has wanted to be an attorney. She's been really passionate about the law. It's something that has just always appealed to her, and she's really good at it. She's really, really good at it. She's good at arguing a case. She's good at understanding legal theory, which I think is unusual, right? Like a 15 or 16-year-old, she's like, I want to nerd out on legal theory and Supreme Court case history. That's not something that I've ever been interested in. And for us as unschoolers, it's always been my desire to affirm and reinforce and empower my kids to dive down whatever rabbit hole they're into, right? To chase their own passions. And so even though there's no attorneys in my family, I come from a long line of, doctors and biochemists. There's no lawyers in our family. My husband's side of the family, no lawyers. This goes to show, anybody who thinks that unschoolers or homeschoolers, like the parents are indoctrinating their kids or wanting their kids to be little carbon copies of them. I want my kids to be their own authentic selves and to have their own passions and their own interests. And that's very much what B has done. And it's been really fascinating to watch and follow her along this journey and to learn a little bit about what this process is like, how the legal system works, and to see what is the path in front of her if this is what she really wants to do. And again, one of the things that's been really, I'll probably talk about this more on my TikTok, but one of the things that has come up for me quite a lot in this process is what an advantage it confers to children. And not that I have not been keenly aware of this fact for a long time, especially as the child of highly educated people, right? I had a significant amount of advantage in many ways in childhood by having a father who was a physician and a mother who was highly educated. And that confers a tremendous amount of advantage. But here in this sphere, my degree is in biology, my expertise is in plants and elementary education, and my husband's expertise is in special education, and also ancient Greek and ancient Hebrew. So to be in a world, in a sphere where most of the kids here, their parents are attorneys or judges, that has been really interesting to see what kind of advantage that confers to them. B is very much an outlier in that her parents are not attorneys, her parents are not judges. We have no connection to the legal field at all. But also then the other advantages, the class advantages that come when your parents are attorneys, and the kind of resources that are available to you to find out how many of the other kids competing here go to competitions like this all the time. When we had to fundraise for months, I had to put in extra hours for 2 months in order to pay for this trip to find out almost all the other kids here just got done with another one of these competitions, on the East Coast or somewhere. And the thought of being able to afford multiple of these competitions every summer, most of these kids have done these for 2 or 3 or 4 years. That's really mind-blowing. So it feels very much like stepping into a very different world, right? We're budgeting for the Uber and how many posters we can afford to have printed. That's been really interesting to me to see what kind of uphill battle, firsthand, kids who want to break into a world or a sphere or a profession that they are not born into and don't have familial advantage, what that looks like. So a number of the kids have brought a team of coaches, a coach, an assistant coach. They fly them in, they fly their parents in. Some kids have even brought friends, peers from their high school mock trial teams that help them prep and play the witness roles, right? Just support roles. And it's just me and B here. So I don't really know where I'm going with this ramble. I'm not being woe is us, we're doing okay. So this whole thing is giving me a little glimpse of what it's like for kids who come from a background without highly educated parents, kids who don't have the class, educational, and economic advantages. So we say a lot in this country, there's the American dream and it's available to anybody, and nobody has an advantage over anyone. We're a classless society. That's so unbelievably untrue. So I don't know. This is probably something stewing for a future video talking about social permaculture, especially in the way affirmative action has been chucked out the window in America, especially the way that we are so anxious to dismiss the real disadvantages, the generational disadvantages, the way that systemic discrimination and oppression has impacted families for generations, and what kind of disadvantage that confers, and how the families who have a history of perhaps being from the haves, being from the group of folks who have done the exploiting of the other folks many generations in the past, how that has conferred advantage that gets passed down for a real long period of time, and what additional hurdles and barriers it takes for people to elevate their circumstances or to even attain educational experiences. So just something I've been thinking about. I always tend to end up waxing kind of philosophical, but that's just how my brain works. So I'll try and make a few more TikToks while I'm here. I have some other thoughts. I can't actually film in the courtroom, and I haven't asked B if she wants to be on camera. I don't want to distract her from her process of prepping, but I did want to give you all an update and say thank you to the folks who have said and continue to say here on my Facebook, on my TikTok, really kind, thoughtful things to my kid, really encouraging things. And thank you to everybody who has watched my TikToks that has made it possible for us to afford this trip. You have funded that trip by watching these videos and watching my TikToks. So thank you. And I'll be back with a real update. I have a video that I filmed 3 days ago in the garden that I will be putting out tomorrow. So don't think there won't be any garden content for the next few days, but there'll definitely be more updates from Atlanta. Okay, I'm gonna get back to my knitting for a few minutes till she's done with scrimmage, and then we're gonna go down and have this big meeting. Thanks so much for watching today. Thanks for continuing to support this channel. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow from the garden. Past me will be here tomorrow in my garden in Portland, and then future me will be here from Atlanta again. Okay. I just finished my second month being monetized on TikTok. So how much did I make? I try to have financial transparency both here and on my YouTube and on my Facebook page. I think it's really important for social media creators to be transparent about how we're compensated by these platforms and how much money we're making. So a little less than 3 months ago, I decided to start learning how to actually use TikTok. I had 528 followers. I didn't really know how to use this platform. I occasionally shared videos of like me cooking or in my garden. And I've been a moderately successful YouTuber for quite a long time. I have 45,000 subscribers over there, and I've been doing YouTube for a long time, and I have a Facebook page as well. But I had never really tried to do anything with my TikTok. It intimidated me a little bit, honestly. But there were all these topics that I wanted to talk about that were too short, too succinct to put on my YouTube channel. I also wanted to talk about things that weren't my typical YouTube permaculture, more gardening focused content. So I thought, okay, I'll try it. And then I thought, well, what if I get really serious about trying to monetize? Some of y'all know that my second kid, B, who just got her GED last week, so she's a high school graduate, she is going to a big mock trial tournament in Atlanta. We're actually flying out later today. She wants to be an attorney. Mock trial has been her passion for a long time. So this tournament had a huge entry fee, and it's very, very expensive. And I thought like, oh God, how am I going to pay for this? And no, I wasn't expecting my kid to earn the money. She was studying for her GED, and she's going to college full-time this summer. And I thought, I wonder if enough people would be interested in engaging with my content that I could monetize TikTok and pay for that trip, knowing that I had 3 months to earn the money. So I spent 3 weeks kind of grinding, making between 4 and 8 TikToks a day. And I went from 528 followers to 10,000 in 3 weeks. And in my first month being monetized on TikTok, I went from 10,000 to 20,000 followers, and I made about $1,100. 120 of which went to the GoFundMe for Salwa and her family in Palestine. So how did I do in my second month being monetized? Making between 3 and 8 videos a day, I made $2,120. So not quite double what I made the month before. I also went from 20,000 followers to 43,000. I don't think that's too shabby, and I paid for our trip to Atlanta in full. I've also developed a bit of a routine of how I make TikToks and how many hours per day I spend doing that, so I'll talk about that in the next video.